Harry Styles, a name that today echoes in stadiums across the world, on the covers of magazines, and in the hearts of millions. To many, he is the golden boy of pop culture, the heartthrob who rose from obscurity to global superstardom. But what if the image you've always seen was carefully constructed? What if behind the polished smile and effortless charm lies a story far darker, far more complicated, and far more shocking than anyone ever told you? The story of Harry Styles is not just the tale of a boy with talent. It is the story of a system, a ruthless machine that manufactures idols, scripts their every move, and hides away anything that doesn't fit the perfect picture. One Direction wasn't simply a boy band. It was a phenomenon, built with precision, designed to dominate the world stage and to generate billions. But for the boys inside it, and especially for Harry, it was a double-edged sword. From the moment he walked into the X Factor audition room, Harry became more than a contestant. He became a product, a carefully shaped piece in a puzzle that no one outside the industry was meant to see. Every outfit, every hairstyle, every smile was calculated. Fans were told they were seeing the real Harry Styles. But were they? Or were they seeing what powerful executives wanted the world to believe? Tonight, we are peeling back the curtain. We will expose the untold truths behind the rise of One Direction and reveal the pressures that turned a small-town boy into a global icon, sometimes at a devastating cost. We'll talk about the hidden contracts, the strict rules, the private struggles, and the shocking manipulations that the world has long ignored. Because the truth is, superstardom comes with a price, and Harry Styles paid it in ways the public never knew. This is not the fairy tale you've been sold. This is not the glamorous love story between a boy and his fans. This is the untold story of Harry Styles, the one that will make you question everything you thought you knew about One Direction and about fame itself. Harry Styles was only 16 years old when he first stepped into the blinding lights of the X Factor. On the surface, it looked like a simple audition, a shy teenager singing Stevie Wonder's Isn't She Lovely. Judges smiled, the audience cheered, and history was written. But what most people don't know is that this moment was never really about chance. It was about strategy, control, and the making of a perfect pop idol. Insiders from the music industry have long whispered that the X Factor wasn't as spontaneous as it appeared. Contestants were carefully scouted, storylines were drafted like television scripts, and young hopefuls were molded into characters that producers believed could sell records. Harry was chosen not only for his voice, but for his look, his charm, and his ability to embody the fantasy of millions of teenage fans worldwide. The truth is, Harry Styles wasn't just discovered, he was designed. When Simon Cowell and the producers decided to combine Harry with 4 other contestants, Niall Horan, Liam Payne, Louis Tomlinson, and Zayn Malik, they weren't simply forming a band. They were creating a global product. Each member was given a role. The mysterious one, the funny one, the cute one, the rebellious one. And then there was Harry, the heartthrob. He was positioned as the face of the group, the one who would carry the burden of the spotlight. And with that role came both incredible fame and crushing pressure. Behind closed doors, contracts were signed that dictated almost every aspect of their lives. Former crew members have revealed that the boys were given media training, strict schedules, and even guidelines on how to interact with fans. Personal freedom? Almost none. Even something as simple as choosing an outfit could be controlled by stylists and executives. For Harry, it meant being locked into an image, the charming, romantic lead, the boy every fan wanted to date. But Harry was more complex than that, and the disconnect between the image and the person was one of the first cracks in the perfect One Direction facade. But the most shocking truth was how early the band's future was mapped out. Even before their first album dropped, marketing deals were already being signed. Global tours were being scheduled, and Harry's face was plastered on merchandise. By the time What Makes You Beautiful became a worldwide hit, One Direction had already been turned into a billion-dollar empire. And Harry? He was the centerpiece. His face sold posters, lunchboxes, and perfume. His smile fueled ticket sales. And while fans believed they were supporting a boy chasing his dreams, the reality was much colder. They were fueling a machine that controlled every aspect of his public identity. Industry insiders have also claimed that Harry's personal life became part of the marketing strategy. Rumored relationships, suspiciously timed paparazzi photos, and carefully crafted headlines kept him constantly in the news. Some call them PR stunts, fake romances staged to keep fans invested and tabloids buzzing. Was Harry really dating the people the press claimed, or was he being used to sell magazines and records? That's a question management never wanted fans to ask. And here lies the most shocking part. Harry Styles, the so-called golden boy, had very little say in any of it. As a teenager, he signed contracts that locked him into years of relentless touring, recording, and promotion. The pressure was immense. And while fans saw the glamour of red carpets and screaming arenas, what they didn't see were the sleepless nights, the exhaustion, and the crushing weight of being packaged and sold like a product. The making of Harry Styles as a pop idol wasn't just about talent. It was about manipulation, control, and profit. He was painted as the dream boyfriend for millions, while behind the scenes, he was just a kid trapped in a system that valued money over mental health. This wasn't just the rise of a star, it was the creation of a character Harry would spend years trying to break free from. And this is where the story takes a darker turn. Because if the making of Harry Styles was about control, the behind-the-scenes reality of One Direction's success was about chaos, conflict, and secrets so shocking that fans would hardly believe them. In the next part, we'll reveal the hidden tensions inside the band, the strict rules imposed by management, and the truth about the chaos that followed One Direction wherever they went. On stage, One Direction appeared unstoppable. 5 young men smiling, laughing, and singing in perfect harmony while millions screamed their names. To the outside world, they looked like the definition of success, glamorous, carefree, living the dream. But behind those lights and cheers, the reality was far more complicated. The truth is, One Direction was less a band and more a pressure cooker, and the chaos building inside it was far darker than the public ever realized. From the very beginning, life in One Direction was governed by rules, not suggestions, not guidelines, but strict regulations written into contracts that dictated every move. Fans believed they were watching spontaneous, fun-loving boys enjoying the ride, but insiders describe a life closer to a military operation than a music career. Drinking in public was forbidden, romantic relationships were policed, and even casual conversations in interviews were carefully scripted in advance. Phones were sometimes confiscated to prevent leaks, outfits were chosen by stylists rather than the boys themselves, and every public appearance was rehearsed. The freedom of being young, rich, and famous was an illusion. In reality, they were living in a cage built out of fame and control. Under these suffocating conditions, tensions began to rise. Imagine being a teenager thrown into global superstardom, with no privacy, no control over your own life, and forced to spend nearly every waking moment with the same 4 people. Of course, arguments happened. Of course, tempers flared. Rumors of fights between the members have swirled for years, and insiders confirm those stories weren't exaggerated. Creative disagreements, personal rivalries, and sheer exhaustion created cracks in the brotherhood fans thought was unbreakable. Harry, pushed into the role of the group's heartthrob, often received more media attention than the others, and that imbalance didn't go unnoticed. Jealousy, frustration, and resentment quietly simmered while cameras captured staged moments of unity. The truth is, behind the scenes, the boys were not always the best of friends. They were business partners, trapped in an arrangement none of them fully controlled. But the greatest source of conflict wasn't jealousy, it was exhaustion. The relentless schedules pushed them far beyond the limits of any normal teenager. World tours followed one another without pause. Interviews filled every spare hour, and recording sessions were squeezed into hotel rooms in the middle of the night. Sleep became a luxury, normal life a distant memory. Harry later admitted that entire stretches of his life during those years are just a blur, forgotten under the weight of endless travel and constant demands. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, and soon the boys were running on fumes. Mistakes became unavoidable. Lyrics forgotten on stage, awkward pauses in interviews, even public breakdowns that were quickly covered up by management. To the fans, the boys looked invincible. In reality, they were burning out before the world's eyes. Adding to the chaos was the hysteria of the fan base. While most fans adored One Direction harmlessly, obsession often crossed dangerous lines. Fans camped outside hotels for days, stormed backstage areas, and chased cars through city streets. Security was a constant presence, not just to protect them from paparazzi, but from the very fans who claimed to love them. And Harry, as the most targeted member, was often the center of this storm. His private life became an open battlefield. Every rumored relationship sparked online wars. Girlfriends faced harassment and death threats, and Harry himself endured constant invasion of his privacy. What the media painted as pure adoration was often closer to obsession, and it took a heavy toll. Yet the most shocking truth is how much of this chaos was deliberately hidden or even manipulated by management. Fights between members, covered up with cheerful behind-the-scenes footage. Rumors of burnout, silenced with a carefully timed publicity stunt. And when the cracks became too obvious, news scandals were often manufactured as distractions. A sudden headline about Harry's supposed romance, a conveniently timed paparazzi photo, or a playful interview clip released just as tensions reached their peak. Everything was controlled, everything was managed, and the boys themselves had little say in how their lives were portrayed. For Harry, it was a nightmare, being both the face of the empire and the prisoner trapped inside it. In private, he struggled under the immense weight of expectation. To fans, he was the charming, cheeky boy who blew kisses and cracked jokes on stage. But behind closed doors, he was often exhausted, conflicted, and trapped in a system that valued his image more than his well-being. The chaos of One Direction's life didn't just test the strength of their friendship, it tested their sanity. And slowly, the cracks that management tried so desperately to hide began to widen. The boys could no longer carry the illusion of perfection forever. For Harry, the pressure was unbearable. Every time he stumbled, the entire machine trembled, and the cost of being the perfect idol grew heavier by the day. What the world saw was a fantasy, 5 young men living a dream life of fame, fortune, and fun. But the reality was chaos, sleepless nights, secret fights, suffocating rules, and a constant battle just to keep going. And as the years passed, Harry Styles began to live 2 lives. The perfect idol the world thought they knew, and the real Harry, the one who was slowly slipping away beneath the weight of it all. In the next part, we will pull back another layer and reveal Harry's double life, the shocking truths about his personal relationships, his hidden struggles, and the secret battles he fought to keep his true self alive in a world that wanted him to play a role forever. For millions of fans, Harry Styles was more than just a singer. He was the dream boyfriend, the charming idol, the untouchable star. But while the world fell in love with this carefully polished version of Harry, very few people realized that another Harry existed, one hidden away, protected, and sometimes even silenced. The boy everyone thought they knew was only half the truth. The other half was carefully hidden behind contracts, staged stories, and endless pressure to keep up appearances. This is the untold truth of Harry Styles' double life. From the earliest days of One Direction, Harry's personal life was treated as part of the brand. Every glance, every rumored relationship, every headline about who he was dating was turned into a weapon of publicity. Insiders have long whispered that many of Harry's so-called romances were orchestrated, carefully timed to distract the public or to fuel media coverage that kept One Direction at the top of the charts. Paparazzi photographs appeared suspiciously perfect, magazine covers hinted at whirlwind love stories, and suddenly, Harry was not just a singer, he was a character in a romantic fantasy that millions of fans consumed like a soap opera. But behind the staged images was a teenager who often had no choice in the matter. Whether he wanted to or not, Harry's love life became a product to be bought and sold. This led to one of the darkest elements of his double life, the constant intrusion of the public into his private world. Any woman seen with him was instantly targeted, insulted, even threatened by obsessive fans who couldn't accept the idea that their idol was dating someone. The pressure was unbearable, not only for Harry, but for the people around him. Relationships that may have been genuine were suffocated under the weight of online abuse, while others were rumored to have been entirely fabricated for the cameras. In both cases, Harry's true feelings became irrelevant. What mattered was the storyline, the image, the fantasy that kept the One Direction machine running. And yet, Harry was far more complicated than the one-dimensional heartthrob management wanted him to be. While executives pushed him to play the role of the cheeky, flirtatious charmer, behind the scenes, he struggled with questions of identity and freedom. His bold fashion choices, which would later become a defining part of his solo career, were initially discouraged. Management feared anything that challenged traditional boy band norms. But Harry quietly rebelled, experimenting with styles and attitudes that hinted at the real person underneath the carefully crafted character. Each step away from the image he had been forced into felt dangerous, yet necessary, as though he were slowly carving out space for his true self to breathe. This constant tug of war between the public Harry and the private Harry created immense strain. Imagine living every day knowing that millions of people think they know you, while in reality, the real you remains hidden, silenced, or misunderstood. Interviews became performances. Smiles became armor. The public adored a version of Harry that wasn't entirely real, while the authentic Harry, the boy with doubts, insecurities, and a longing for freedom, was locked away where only a few close friends could see him. There were also whispers of the battles Harry fought silently. The pressure to maintain the perfect image took a toll on his mental health. The constant paparazzi, the endless rumors, the impossibility of keeping anything private, all of it weighed heavily on him. While fans saw glamour, what they didn't see were the lonely hotel rooms, the paranoia of being watched, the exhaustion of living a life that didn't feel fully his own. Fame had given him everything, but at the same time, it had stolen the simplest human right, the ability to just exist without being analyzed or judged. And then there was the issue of identity, an aspect of Harry's life that has always fueled speculation. From the very beginning, fans and media alike dissected every detail, every gesture, every friendship, trying to label him, trying to pin him down. Was he straight, gay, bisexual, something else? Was his flamboyant style a marketing trick, or was it the real Harry breaking free? While Harry himself refused to be defined by labels, choosing to exist beyond them, the constant speculation became another prison. His every move was twisted into headlines, his true self drowned out by noise. And yet, through it all, he remained remarkably composed, as though determined to protect the parts of himself that the world had no right to own.
But the double life wasn't only about image, it was also about control. Insiders have revealed that Harry's desire to explore his own artistic direction often clashed with management. He wanted more freedom, more say in the music he created, the clothes he wore, and the way he was portrayed. But every time he pushed for individuality, he was reminded that One Direction was a business first, and that individuality was dangerous to the brand. This battle between conformity and authenticity defined Harry's years in the band. To the world, he was the perfect pop idol. To himself, he was an artist trapped in a box, waiting for the chance to break free. And perhaps the most heartbreaking truth is this: the Harry Styles fans loved in One Direction was not entirely Harry Styles the person, but Harry Styles the product. He was the smiling boy on posters, the charming flirt in interviews, the dream boyfriend on magazine covers. But the real Harry, the one who longed for privacy, who questioned his place in the system, who struggled under the crushing weight of expectation, was hidden away. His double life was the price of fame, adored by millions, but known by almost no one. As the years passed, the strain of this double existence grew heavier. The cracks became harder to hide. The public Harry and the private Harry drifted further apart, and the illusion could not last forever. Something had to break, and soon it would. Because while Harry Styles was living two lives, one for the cameras and one for himself, the chaos inside One Direction was pushing the band closer and closer to collapse. The breaking point was near, and Harry would soon have to decide whether to keep playing the role he had been given, or to risk everything to finally live as himself. Fame. For most people, the word alone sounds like a dream. The adoration, the wealth, the red carpets, the screaming crowds, it's everything a young artist could possibly want. But for Harry Styles, fame was never just a dream, it was also a trap. Behind the flashing cameras and endless applause, there was a darker story playing out, a reality so carefully hidden that fans never saw it, and perhaps never wanted to see it. Because the truth is, the dark side of Harry Styles' fame is filled with secrets so shocking they challenge the very idea of what it means to be a star. The first and most brutal truth is the toll fame took on his mental health. From the very beginning of One Direction's rise, Harry was thrust into a spotlight so intense it would have broken most adults, let alone a teenager. Everywhere he went, cameras followed. Every mistake, every word, every expression was dissected by millions. There was no such thing as privacy. Even stepping out of a hotel room could mean facing hundreds of fans and dozens of paparazzi. At first, it was exhilarating, but as the years wore on, it became suffocating. Insiders describe Harry as increasingly withdrawn during his downtime, often retreating into silence after shows, drained by the constant need to perform both on and off stage. To fans, he was the life of the party. In reality, he was often exhausted, overwhelmed, and struggling to maintain the cheerful image that was expected of him. But the mental toll went beyond exhaustion. There were darker moments, moments of paranoia, when Harry feared even his closest relationships were being watched. Moments when the noise of fame became deafening. Imagine never being able to trust whether the person talking to you is a true friend or just someone hoping to sell a story. Imagine never being able to walk down the street without being followed. For Harry, this wasn't imagination, it was daily life. And though he rarely spoke openly about it, the signs were there. Small glimpses in interviews, nervous laughs when journalists pushed too hard, or the rare admissions years later when he confessed that parts of his early fame were traumatic. Then came the money, or rather the shocking truth about it. Fans assumed that being in the biggest band in the world meant unlimited riches, but the reality was far more complicated. Industry insiders have revealed that during One Direction's peak, the label and management were making far more money than the boys themselves. Album sales, tours, merchandise, the billions generated by the One Direction machine were funneled into corporations, executives, and shareholders, while the actual artists, including Harry, saw only a fraction. Yes, they became wealthy, but nowhere near as wealthy as the empire they had built. The imbalance was staggering. And for Harry, who was marketed as the face of the band, it meant watching his own image make other people rich, while he had little control over his own fortune. The shocking truth is that Harry Styles, the global superstar, was often treated less like an artist and more like an investment, a product to be managed and exploited for maximum profit. And the exploitation didn't stop with money. His personal life was also weaponized for fame. We've already seen how PR relationships and carefully timed scandals were used to distract or promote, but the darker side was the cost to Harry's actual happiness. Genuine relationships were destroyed under public scrutiny. Anyone seen with him was subjected to harassment, abuse, and even death threats from fans. Entire corners of the internet dedicated themselves to analyzing his every move, creating conspiracy theories about his love life, questioning his identity, and feeding a machine of obsession that turned toxic. To millions of fans, Harry wasn't a person. He was a projection, an idea, a fantasy that they believed they owned. And when reality didn't match the fantasy, the backlash was vicious. Some of the stories from this time are almost unbelievable. Cars chased by fans at dangerous speeds, Harry trapped inside hotels because crowds outside had grown violent, even situations where police had to intervene to prevent stampedes. What the media painted as innocent fan devotion often bordered on hysteria, and at its worst, it became dangerous. Harry, who has always been known for his kindness and composure, bore the brunt of this obsession with remarkable patience. But the truth is, he was often frightened, often suffocated, and often forced to hide just to feel normal for a few moments. And then there was the tabloid circus, the endless cycle of headlines that twisted every detail of his life into sensational stories. If Harry was seen smiling with someone, tabloids declared them a couple. If he wore a certain outfit, headlines speculated about his sexuality. If he looked tired in a photo, rumors spread about drugs or depression. Every move was turned into a narrative, often completely detached from reality. For Harry, it meant never being able to control his own story. His truth was constantly rewritten by strangers who had never met him, and millions believed those lies without question. The shocking reality is that Harry Styles, one of the most famous men in the world, often had the least control over his own identity. And yet, perhaps the darkest side of all was the way fame robbed him of his youth. While other teenagers and young adults were discovering who they were, making mistakes in private, and growing up naturally, Harry was living in a glass cage. Every mistake was public. Every experiment, every rebellion, every doubt, all of it was scrutinized by the world. The normal process of growing up was stolen from him, replaced by the burden of carrying an empire on his shoulders. He wasn't just Harry Styles. He was Harry Styles the brand, the dream, the product that millions of people consumed daily. Still, through all of this, Harry remained remarkably resilient. Perhaps that's the most shocking fact of all, that despite the mental toll, the exploitation, the obsession, and the loss of privacy, he never collapsed entirely under the weight of fame. Others in his position have turned to drugs, spiraled into self-destruction, or vanished from the spotlight. Harry didn't. He endured. He survived. And in time, he even managed to transform the very fame that nearly destroyed him into something empowering. But survival came at a cost, and the scars of those early years would never fully fade. The dark side of Harry Styles' fame is not just his story. It is a warning, a glimpse into what happens when human beings are treated as commodities, when young artists are packaged and sold like products, when the world demands perfection at the expense of reality. Harry lived through it, but he paid the price in ways few will ever understand. And as One Direction's chaos escalated and the pressures of his double life became unbearable, it was clear that something had to change. The machine could not run forever. And soon, Harry would face the most important choice of his life: continue being the product everyone expected, or finally break free and reinvent himself as the artist he had always wanted to be. For years, Harry Styles lived two lives. There was the Harry the world thought they knew, the cheeky charmer, the perfect pop idol, the smiling face of One Direction. And then there was the hidden Harry, the exhausted teenager, the artist desperate to explore, the young man slowly suffocating under the weight of fame. By the time One Direction reached its peak, the cracks in that double life had grown too deep to ignore. Something had to change. And behind closed doors, Harry began planning his escape.
The truth is, Harry Styles' reinvention didn't begin the day One Direction announced their hiatus. It began years earlier, in quiet moments when he secretly pushed for more creative control, when he experimented with writing songs in private, when he dared to imagine a life outside the cage of the world's biggest boy band. He had watched the system strip away his youth, his privacy, and his autonomy, and he knew that if he didn't take control, the system would consume him completely. But breaking free was not easy. Contracts tied the boys tightly to management and label obligations. Every move was watched, every request scrutinized. Harry's desire to branch out, to explore new styles of music, was often met with resistance. He had been built into a character, the heartthrob, the safe pop star, the golden boy. Anything that challenged that role was seen as a risk to the brand. But Harry wasn't just a character. He was an artist, and he refused to be boxed in forever. Slowly, quietly, he began carving his own path. Even during the chaos of One Direction's tours, Harry was writing. In hotel rooms, on scraps of paper, in notebooks he carried everywhere, he was pouring out music that sounded nothing like the glossy pop hits that had made him famous. These songs were raw, influenced by classic rock, folk, and soul, worlds away from the upbeat boy band anthems. Few knew it at the time, but Harry was already building the foundation for his solo career, one that would shock those who thought they had him figured out. And as One Direction edged closer to collapse, Harry made a bold decision. While some members drifted into the background, Harry went straight to the heart of the music industry. He signed with Jeffrey Ossoff, a powerful manager with deep connections, and with Columbia Records, ensuring that when the time came, he would have the freedom and backing to launch himself as more than just an ex-boy band member. He wasn't waiting for permission, he was preparing to take control. When One Direction officially went on hiatus in 2016, the world speculated about whether Harry could survive outside the group. History is littered with boy band members who vanished into obscurity the moment their groups ended. But Harry had something different: vision. He knew he couldn't simply release another catchy pop track and hope to stay relevant. He needed to shock the world, to prove that he was not just a product but a true artist. And shock them he did. When Harry Styles released his debut solo single, Sign of the Times, it wasn't the bubblegum pop anyone expected. It was a 6-minute epic, compared to Bowie and Queen, drenched in melancholy and grandeur. It was daring, risky, and utterly unlike anything he had ever been allowed to release before. Critics who had dismissed him as just another boy band pretty face were stunned. The song topped charts around the world, but more importantly, it announced the arrival of a new Harry Styles, one who refused to play it safe, one who would never again be confined by the rules of his past. The reinvention didn't stop with music. Harry transformed his image completely, embracing a bold, gender-fluid style that shattered expectations. Gone was the carefully styled boy band wardrobe. In its place were glittering suits, silk blouses, painted nails, and Gucci gowns. Photographs of Harry in traditionally feminine clothing made headlines around the world. Some praised him as a trailblazer, others mocked him, accusing him of using fashion as a gimmick. But for Harry, it was never about gimmicks. It was about freedom, the freedom to finally express himself without fear of what management or fans might say. This reinvention was more than a career move. It was an act of rebellion. For years, Harry had been told what to wear, what to say, and how to act. Now, he was rewriting the rules on his own terms. He embraced ambiguity, refused to define himself by labels, and leaned into the fluid, artistic side of his personality that had always been hidden. And in doing so, he connected with millions of people who felt constrained by the same rigid expectations. He wasn't just making music, he was becoming a cultural icon. But this transformation didn't come without risk. For every fan who adored his bold new style, there were critics ready to tear him down. Tabloids questioned his masculinity. Traditionalists mocked his clothing choices. Even some former fans struggled to accept the change. Harry knew this could happen. He knew he could lose everything by stepping outside the role he had been given. But he chose authenticity over safety, truth over illusion, and in the end, that risk paid off. Instead of fading into obscurity, Harry Styles became bigger than ever. His solo albums received critical acclaim, not just commercial success. His tours sold out instantly, filled not only with former One Direction fans, but with new audiences drawn to his artistry. He starred in Hollywood films, earning respect as more than just a singer. And through it all, he remained unapologetically himself, refusing to explain, refusing to be boxed in, refusing to play by the rules that had once trapped him. Perhaps the most shocking fact of Harry's reinvention is how completely he overturned the expectations set for him.
Industry insiders once doubted that any boy band member could ever truly escape the shadow of their group. But Harry didn't just escape it, he shattered it. He went from being the most controlled member of One Direction to being one of the most unpredictable, fearless, and respected artists of his generation. His journey is not just one of survival, it is one of total transformation. And yet, the story of Harry Styles' reinvention is not without its costs. The path he chose meant letting go of parts of his past, distancing himself from the image that had once made him famous. It meant enduring criticism, fighting for creative freedom, and exposing himself to new levels of scrutiny. But it also meant finally living life on his own terms. For Harry, reinvention was not just a career move. It was salvation. The boy who had once been a prisoner of fame had become its master. The teenager who had once been told what to wear, what to sing, and how to act had become one of the most influential cultural figures of his generation. The product had become an artist. And in doing so, Harry Styles didn't just reinvent himself, he redefined what it means to break free from the machine of fame. But freedom, as Harry knew all too well, is never complete. The scars of his past remained, and the cost of his transformation was written into every step of his journey. As he stood on stage, glittering under the lights, the world saw a man who had conquered it all. But behind the smile, there was still the memory of the boy who had nearly been destroyed by the very system he had now outgrown. And that brings us to the final chapter of this story, the legacy of Harry Styles, and the untold truths that even now, the world may not be ready to face. Harry Styles' journey is often told like a fairy tale. A boy from a small English town auditions for a talent show, rises to global superstardom, and becomes one of the most influential artists of his generation. But as we've uncovered, the truth behind this story is far darker, far more complex, and far more human. The legacy of Harry Styles is not just about the success he achieved, but about the impossible sacrifices he made along the way, and the scars that fame left behind. When fans look at Harry today, the confident solo artist, the cultural icon, the man whose fashion and music inspire millions, they see triumph. But that triumph came at a price. Behind every smile on stage was exhaustion. Behind every headline about his love life was manipulation. Behind every glittering performance was a young man carrying the weight of an empire. The untold truth is that Harry's legacy is built not only on his achievements, but also on his survival. Survival of an industry that tried to break him, survival of a system that saw him as a product, and survival of the unimaginable pressure of being adored, hated, and judged by millions before he even knew who he really was. The legacy of Harry Styles is also one of transformation. He is not the boy the world first met in 2010. That boy was crafted by executives, styled for cameras, and trained to smile through the pain. Today's Harry is a man who tore down the walls around him, who broke free from the image that was forced upon him, and who chose to live on his own terms. His journey is a testament to the strength it takes to reinvent yourself when the world demands you stay the same. It's shocking, really, how few artists ever achieve what Harry has, the ability to step out of the biggest boy band in the world and create an identity more powerful, more respected, and more enduring than the one that made him famous. But legacy is never simple. There are questions that remain unanswered, truths that remain hidden. Did management manipulate his relationships? Did the band members resent the role he was forced into? Did Harry ever fully recover from the years of control, obsession, and chaos? These questions linger, whispered by fans and insiders alike, because the machine of fame thrives on secrecy. What we do know is that Harry carried burdens we can barely imagine: the paranoia of being watched, the trauma of constant invasion, the heartbreak of losing his youth to a system that saw him as nothing more than a brand. And yet, what makes Harry's story so shocking and so inspiring is not the darkness, but the way he turned it into light. Instead of collapsing under the weight of his past, he transformed it into art. His music reflects pain, longing, freedom, and defiance. His fashion reflects rebellion against conformity. His very existence as a public figure challenges the stereotypes and expectations that once caged him. Harry's legacy is not just about the songs he sings, but about the statement he makes simply by being himself, unapologetically, after years of being told who to be. There is also the legacy Harry left behind for One Direction itself. Without him, the band may have crumbled earlier, or been remembered as just another manufactured boy band. With him, they reached heights no one thought possible, dominating charts, breaking records, and leaving an imprint on pop culture that still lingers today. But Harry's departure into solo stardom also redefined the narrative of boy bands forever. He proved that breaking free is possible, that an artist can emerge from the shadows of a machine and eclipse the very system that created him. That truth shocked the industry, and it continues to ripple through pop culture today.
But the legacy is not just professional, it's deeply personal. For fans, Harry Styles became more than a musician. He became a symbol of freedom, of individuality, of courage. People who felt trapped by expectations saw themselves in his journey. People who felt different, misunderstood, or silenced found inspiration in the way he refused to conform. In a world obsessed with labels and categories, Harry's refusal to define himself became a radical act of defiance. His legacy is not just about the music industry, it's about culture, identity, and the possibility of living authentically, no matter the cost. And yet, the untold truth of his legacy is that it remains bittersweet. Yes, Harry triumphed. Yes, he reinvented himself. Yes, he became an icon. But he also lost something along the way: his childhood, his privacy, his ability to make mistakes without the world watching. The scars of those years will never disappear. Every time he steps on stage, every time he walks through a crowd, every time his photo splashes across tabloids, he is reminded of the price he paid to get here. And though he now carries that burden with grace, the weight of it will always be there. In the end, Harry Styles' legacy is one of contradiction. He is both the victim of a ruthless system and the master of his destiny. He is both the product of the machine and the proof that it can be defeated. He is both the boy the world thought they owned and the man who proved he could never be owned at all. His story shocks us, not just because of the darkness it reveals, but because of the strength it took to emerge from that darkness stronger than ever. And so, as we close this untold truth, we must ask, what is Harry Styles' true legacy? Is it the music, the fashion, the fame? Or is it the reminder that behind every idol is a human being, fragile, flawed, and fighting battles we may never see? Perhaps that is the most shocking truth of all, that Harry Styles, the superstar adored by millions, is still just Harry, a man who survived the chaos of fame and turned it into art, a man who taught the world that authenticity is the greatest rebellion, and a man whose journey will forever change how we look at celebrity itself. The fairy tale of Harry Styles was never real. The untold truth, however, is far more powerful. It is the story of a boy who became a prisoner, a product, and finally an icon. It is the story of suffering turned into strength, of control turned into creativity, of illusion turned into authenticity. It is the story of a legacy built not on perfection, but on resilience. And that is why Harry Styles will never just be remembered as the star of a boy band. He will be remembered as the man who broke free from the machine, and in doing so, rewrote the meaning of fame itself. If you've made it this far, one thing is clear. The untold truth of Harry Styles is more than just a story. It is a warning, an inspiration, and a reminder that even the brightest stars cast shadows. The world may think it knows Harry Styles, but the real truth, the shocking truth, is that his journey is only just beginning. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you believe is the biggest untold truth about Harry Styles? And stay tuned, because the story of One Direction isn't over yet. The secrets of their breakup, the hidden tensions, and the shocking revelations about the band's final days are still to come. And so, we've uncovered the untold truth of Harry Styles. From his carefully manufactured rise in One Direction, to the suffocating rules that controlled his every move, to the chaos and obsession that nearly broke him, and finally, to the shocking reinvention that turned him into one of the most iconic artists of our time. This is not the fairy tale the world was told. This is the truth, raw, painful, and unforgettable. Harry Styles' story is proof that fame comes with a cost. It takes, it exploits, it scars. But it is also proof that no cage, no machine, and no label can hold back authenticity forever. He was supposed to remain the perfect boy band idol. Instead, he became something no one expected. An artist who rewrote the rules, a cultural figure who defied expectations, and a survivor who turned pain into power. And now, the question is yours. What do you believe is the biggest untold truth about Harry Styles? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because his story isn't finished, and the discussion has only just begun. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload, and give this video a like to support our work. We have much more coming, including the shocking, untold secrets behind One Direction's breakup, the hidden rivalries, and the truths the industry never wanted you to hear. Stay with us, because the story of Harry Styles is only the beginning.
You're one of us. Stay curious, stay brave. like, subscribe, and never miss a twist.